The chandeliers sparkled above like frozen stars, their light glinting off the crystal glasses and polished marble floors of the Sterling estate. The ballroom was alive with chatter and laughter. Powerful men in tailored suits, women in elegant gowns, and photographers catching every poised smile. And yet, Sophia Blake Sterling felt utterly invisible. Standing beside her husband, Ethan Sterling, the billionaire CEO known for his charm in public and ice in private, she wore her practiced smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was the same smile she had worn for 2 years of marriage. Tonight was another charity gala, another night of pretending they were the perfect couple. Ethan's hand rested lightly on the small of her back, not out of affection, but control. "Smile," he whispered, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Investors are watching." Sophia's chest tightened. She smiled, mechanically, flawlessly, and nodded to the passing guests. She had once mistaken his confidence for strength, his ambition for passion. But now she saw him for what he truly was: calculated, detached, and incapable of love. As the night wore on, Ethan moved from group to group, charming donors and reporters. He didn't once glance back at her. She stood there, the picture-perfect wife, until the weight of pretense grew unbearable. She slipped away to the balcony for air. The cold night wind felt almost kind as it brushed against her skin. The city stretched below, glittering and endless, freedom just out of reach. "Sophia?" a voice called softly. It was Maya, her oldest friend, one of the few who still visited despite Ethan's quiet disapproval. "You look tired," Maya said gently, joining her. Sophia's composure cracked. "I can't do this anymore, Maya," she said quietly. "The parties, the smiles, the pretending." Her voice trembled. "He doesn't love me. He never did." Maya frowned, studying her. "Then why stay?" Sophia's gaze drifted back toward the glittering ballroom. "Because I thought I could fix it. That maybe if I tried harder, he'd see me." She let out a small broken laugh. "But to him, I'm just part of the image. Mrs. Sterling. The perfect accessory." At that moment, the glass doors opened. Ethan stepped out, phone in hand, barely glancing at them. "Sophia," he said sharply, "the press wants a photo of us together. Come inside." She didn't move. "Now," he added, not looking up from his phone. Sophia studied him for a long moment, the man she had once believed she loved. His expression was impassive, his tone transactional. There was no warmth, no remorse, no recognition of her pain. Only control. Something inside her shifted, subtle but irreversible. The illusion shattered completely. "No," she said softly. Ethan froze, finally lifting his gaze. "What did you say?" "I said no," she repeated, her voice steady this time. "I'm done pretending, Ethan. I'm done being part of your perfect picture." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, then amusement. "Don't be dramatic, Sophia. We can talk about this later." But she didn't wait for later. She turned, her heels clicking against the marble, and walked back into the ballroom. Past the guests, the flashing cameras, the world that had once trapped her. By the time Ethan realized she wasn't following, she was already gone. That night, Sophia packed a single suitcase. She didn't take much, just her essentials and the courage she hadn't known she possessed. As she closed the door behind her, she looked back one last time at the mansion that had once symbolized everything she thought she wanted. It now felt empty, lifeless, a monument to her disillusionment. "I'll never come back," she whispered. Outside, the night was cold but clear. Sophia wrapped her coat tighter around her and stepped into the waiting cab. The driver asked for her destination. "Anywhere but here," she said. As the city lights blurred past the window, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. Painful, uncertain but real. And though she didn't know it yet, this was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning of her rise. The moment Sophia Blake stopped being someone's wife and began becoming someone powerful on her own. The rain fell steadily outside the small apartment window, tracing thin silver lines against the glass. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, if it could be called that. It was a simple mattress on a metal frame, far from the lavish bedroom she had once shared with Ethan Sterling. The hum of the city below filled the silence, replacing the sterile quiet of her old mansion. It had been 2 weeks since she left. 2 weeks of headlines, whispered rumors, and phone calls she ignored. The sterling marriage ends in mystery. Billionaire's wife walks out without a word. Sophia had read none of them. She didn't need the media to tell her what she already knew, that she was finally free, even if freedom came with a price. Her savings were limited. Most of the accounts had been joint, controlled by Ethan's lawyers. But she had her own education, her own ideas, and a stubborn resolve she'd almost forgotten she had. Still, the mornings were the hardest. She'd wake and instinctively reach for the other side of the bed. Cold, empty, and reality would hit again. Maya had called every day since she left. When Sophia finally answered, her friend's voice was warm but firm. "You can't just sit there hiding from the world, sophomore. Come on. Meet me for coffee. You need to breathe." That's how Sophia found herself sitting across from Maya in a cozy downtown cafe, her hands wrapped around a cup of steaming cappuccino. Maya leaned in, lowering her voice. "You look better than I expected," she said with a half-smile. "No offense." Sophia laughed softly. "I'll take it. I'm still figuring out who I am without him." "You were always you," Maya said. "He just made you forget." Sophia looked down, stirring her coffee. "I don't even know where to start. My whole life for the last few years revolved around his schedule, his image, his world. Now it's just me." "Then that's your starting point," Maya said simply. "What do you want to do, Sophia?" The question lingered long after their conversation ended. 4 years, she had been Ethan's wife, his silent partner, his perfectly groomed trophy. What did she want? That night, she opened her laptop and stared at a blank page. It had been ages since she'd written anything for herself. Before the marriage, she'd been a marketing consultant. Creative, driven, ambitious. Somewhere along the way, she had let that version of herself fade. But now, there was nothing stopping her from finding that woman again. She began small, freelance work, consulting projects, local clients who didn't care about her past or her name. The work was challenging, the pay modest, but each success felt monumental. She worked late into the nights, drinking coffee instead of champagne, earning through effort rather than association. Days turned into weeks. The apartment began to feel like home, plants on the windowsill, books stacked by the bed, laughter returning to her voice. One evening, after sending off a proposal to a potential client, she looked around her modest space and felt something she hadn't in years: pride. That was when Maya called again. "Guess who's hosting a networking event this weekend? Sterling Enterprises. Big one. Investors, CEOs, media. You should come." Sophia froze. "You're kidding." "No. But hear me out. You're not the same woman you were. Show them that. Show him that." Sophia hesitated, memories flooding back. Ethan's icy voice, the sterile perfection of his world. "I don't want to see him." "You don't have to go for him," Maya said gently. "Go for you." That night, Sophia stood before her mirror, studying her reflection. Her hair was shorter now, her style simpler, but her eyes, those once dull eyes, were alive again. She had built something of her own, even if it was still small. For the first time, she didn't see the woman Ethan had molded. She saw someone stronger, freer, and more certain of her worth. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe facing the past wasn't weakness, it was proof of how far she'd come. Sophia exhaled slowly, a spark of resolve lighting within her. She didn't know what would happen if she walked into that room again, or if Ethan would even notice her. But this time, she wouldn't be the one standing quietly at his side. She'd walk in as Sophia Blake, not Mrs. Sterling. And when she did, he'd see what he lost. Sophia adjusted the strap of her black dress, took one final glance in the mirror, and smiled faintly. The woman staring back at her looked composed. Confident, even. It was a look she hadn't worn in years. Her posture was straight, her eyes were clear, and for once, she wasn't dressing for anyone but herself. Tonight wasn't just another social event. It was her debut as a professional in her own right. Her small consulting firm, Blake Strategies, had just secured its first major contract. A marketing campaign for an eco-luxury startup. And tonight's networking event could open even more doors. As she stepped out of her apartment, the city lights reflected in her eyes like tiny sparks of possibility. The venue buzzed with conversation when she arrived. It wasn't as extravagant as the galas she'd attended with Ethan, but it was alive with ambition. The kind of energy she'd always craved. entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators mingled, exchanging cards and ideas. Sophia made her way to the bar, exhaling softly to steady her nerves. This was her world now. No last names. No expectations. Just her. "Excuse me," a warm voice said beside her. "Sophia Blake, right?" She turned to see a man about her age. Tall, easy smile, sharp but kind eyes. "I'm Lucas Carter," he said, offering his hand. "I read your piece on sustainable branding. Brilliant work." Sophia blinked in surprise. "You actually read that?" "Twice," he said with a grin. "I run Carter Ventures. We invest in eco-focused startups. Your ideas align perfectly with what we're building." Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Lucas wasn't like the men she used to meet in Ethan's world. He didn't dominate the conversation, didn't talk down to her. He listened. As the night went on, Sophia found herself laughing, discussing business, even sharing personal stories she hadn't told anyone in years. "You're different," Lucas said at one point. She tilted her head, intrigued. "Different how?" "You talk like someone who's been through fire," he said simply. "But instead of burning, you built something from the ashes." Sophia smiled softly. "Maybe that's what surviving does to you." By the time she returned home, her cheeks ached from smiling. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed enjoying people, without fear, without judgment, without walking on glass. Over the next few weeks, work flooded in. Her firm's reputation grew rapidly. Clients loved her approach. Authentic, bold, strategic. She built a small but loyal team, mostly women who, like her, had been overlooked or underestimated. Each success felt like reclaiming a piece of herself that Ethan had tried to suppress. The version of Sophia who had once been afraid to speak too loudly now stood at the head of conference tables, leading presentations with calm authority. Sometimes, though, when she caught her reflection in a mirror mid-meeting, she'd almost laugh. Who is this woman? The answer was simple. Someone reborn. It wasn't until 3 months later that the past found her again. Maya called one morning, her tone hesitant. "Soph, have you seen today's paper?" Sophia frowned, flipping open her laptop. And there it was, a headline she didn't expect to see. Sterling Enterprises announces expansion. Partners with Carter Ventures. Her heart skipped. Carter Ventures. "Lucas." "Oh no," she murmured. Maya's voice was cautious. "You'll probably have to see him again." Sophia closed her laptop and stared out the window, the city below glowing in the early light. She wasn't the same woman who'd left Ethan. But the thought of facing him, his cold eyes, his quiet arrogance, still made her pulse quicken. Part of her wanted to run, to stay far away from that world. But another part of her, the stronger part, lifted her chin. No. She wouldn't hide this time. If fate wanted to put Ethan Sterling back in her path, she'd meet him there. Not as the wife he discarded, but as the woman he'd never expected her to become. That night, she received a message from Lucas. "Meeting at Sterling Tower next week. Would love for you to join the presentation as a strategic consultant. You up for it?" Sophia's fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed her reply. "Absolutely." When she hit send, a thrill ran through her. Not of fear, but anticipation. Because for the first time since she'd walked away, she didn't feel like the one who'd lost everything. This time, she'd be the one walking into his world, and she'd do it on her own terms. The elevator glided upward in smooth, soundless motion, its mirrored walls reflecting Sophia's calm expression. She clutched a sleek black portfolio in her hand, her heart steady, her breathing controlled. On the surface, she was the picture of professionalism. Inside, however, a current of tension hummed beneath her skin. The screen above the elevator doors displayed the words Sterling Enterprises, 52nd floor. It had been a year since she'd last walked away from Ethan Sterling's empire, and from him. Sophia exhaled slowly as the doors opened. The office was as she remembered, vast, cold, efficient. Walls of glass framed the skyline, and a long corridor stretched ahead, lined with framed awards and press clippings about Ethan's accomplishments. His name was everywhere. Lucas was already waiting near the conference room, phone in hand, his easy smile instantly grounding her. "Sophia, you made it," he said, offering her a reassuring nod. "Don't worry. You'll be brilliant as always." "I'm not worried," she said, and it was true, mostly. Lucas grinned. That's the spirit. Together, they stepped inside the room. The meeting was packed with executives, assistants, and representatives from both companies. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation. And there he was. Ethan Sterling sat at the head of the table, impeccable in a charcoal suit. His presence was commanding, the kind that made people lower their voices instinctively. But when his eyes lifted and met hers, for a fleeting second, his composure faltered. Sophia didn't flinch. She walked in with confidence, every step measured and deliberate, as if the floor itself bowed beneath her heels. "Mr. Sterling," she greeted coolly, offering a professional nod. "Ms. Blake," he replied, his voice deep and controlled, though she caught the subtle pause before he spoke her name, like he was still adjusting to the sound of it. Lucas began outlining the proposal, his tone animated, drawing everyone's attention to the projected presentation. Sophia joined him smoothly, expanding on marketing strategies, potential reach, and branding plans. She spoke clearly, every word precise, her confidence unshakable. Ethan said nothing at first, just watched her. Too intently. The silence between them was a pulse beneath the conversation. It wasn't hostility exactly. It was recognition. The kind that comes when two people realize how much the world has shifted between them. When the meeting concluded, executives filed out, murmuring compliments about the pitch. Lucas excused himself to take a call, leaving Sophia to gather her materials. That's when Ethan finally spoke. "You've changed," he said quietly. Sophia looked up, her expression unreadable. "I suppose success tends to do that." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're doing well for yourself." "Well enough," she said, sliding her portfolio into her bag. "Though I'm sure you already knew that before today. You always did like to keep tabs on what's yours." His jaw tightened. "You're not." He stopped himself, the word catching. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," she admitted. "But business has a funny way of bringing people back together." For a moment, neither spoke. The city stretched behind him in shades of steel and silver, a reflection of the man himself, cold, distant, impenetrable. But there was something new in his gaze now, something softer, conflicted. "You walked away without a word," he said finally, his tone low, measured. Sophia met his eyes. "You never would have listened if I had stayed to explain." He said nothing. She smiled faintly, gathering the last of her things. "Anyway, Mr. Sterling, it was enlightening to see you again. Good luck with your expansion." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "Sophia." Her name sounded different in his mouth now. No longer a command, but something closer to longing. She didn't turn around. "Yes." "Why did you really leave?" he asked. Sophia paused, her hand on the door. "Because I finally realized I didn't have to ask for love," she said softly. "And I wasn't going to beg for it either." Then she walked out, the echo of her heels a quiet declaration of victory. Outside, Lucas was waiting, his expression curious. "Everything okay in there?" Sophia smiled, her heartbeat finally steady again. "Better than okay," she said. "It turns out I'm not afraid of ghosts anymore." Lucas chuckled. "Good. Because something tells me that won't be the last time you run into him." Sophia glanced back at the towering glass building. Somewhere inside, Ethan was probably still sitting at that table, wondering how the woman he once overlooked had turned into someone he could no longer control, or forget. She turned away, the corners of her lips lifting. "Then I hope he's watching," she said. "Because this time he'll see me rise." The days that followed the Sterling Enterprises meeting unfolded with a rhythm Sophia hadn't expected. Her firm's collaboration with Carter Ventures was thriving. Calls poured in, clients wanted her insights, and her name began circulating through professional circles. Not as Ethan Sterling's ex-wife, but as Sophia Blake, the strategist with precision, charm, and brilliance. It was exactly how she'd imagined rebuilding her life, on merit, not association. Yet, one afternoon, as she sat reviewing proposals in her new office, her assistant knocked gently. "There's someone here to see you, Ms. Blake." Sophia didn't look up. "Tell them to schedule an appointment." He insisted, her assistant said carefully. "Mr. Ethan Sterling." Sophia froze, her pen pausing mid-stroke. She inhaled once, slow and steady, then closed her folder. "Send him in." When Ethan walked through the glass doors, he looked perfectly composed, as always. But his eyes told another story. Curiosity, irritation, and something like disbelief. Her office wasn't lavish, but it was refined. Warm lighting, clean lines, a few personal touches that spoke of confidence without excess. It was a world entirely her own. "Impressive," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "I prefer efficient," she replied coolly, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. "What brings you here, Mr. Sterling?" He sat, uninvited but self-assured. "I wanted to discuss the Carter Ventures collaboration. I hear you're consulting directly on the project." Sophia folded her hands. "I am. Is that a problem?" "No," he said after a moment. "Just unexpected." She smiled faintly. "You'll find that's a common theme with me lately." For the first time since their marriage, she saw it, the flicker of unease in his eyes. The man who had once dictated every part of her life suddenly seemed uncertain. "You've done well for yourself," he said, his tone controlled but grudgingly sincere. "I've worked hard," she corrected gently. "There's a difference." Ethan studied her for a long moment, his fingers interlaced, his posture deceptively relaxed. "Was it really so terrible, Sophia? Our marriage?" Sophia's heart clenched, but she kept her voice calm. "It wasn't terrible. It was empty. You needed a wife for your image, and I needed to believe love could change someone. We both got what we wanted. For a while." He leaned forward slightly. "And now," she said, meeting his gaze evenly, "I no longer need to be saved or chosen. I choose myself." The words hung between them like a quiet challenge. Ethan's expression hardened. He wasn't used to being dismissed. "You make it sound simple." "It wasn't," she said softly. "But it was necessary." He stood after a pause, smoothing his suit jacket. "You're different, Sophia." "I had to be," she replied. As he turned to leave, she added almost casually, "Oh, and Ethan? Try not to let business get personal. It doesn't suit you." His head turned slightly at that, a ghost of a smirk tugging at his lips. "I'll keep that in mind." When he left, Sophia sank back into her chair, her pulse quickening. She'd faced him, on her turf in her power, and hadn't faltered. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just surviving her past anymore. She was commanding it. Over the next few weeks, the subtle game between them began. Ethan requested her presence at strategy meetings, for alignment. He asked for her opinion during presentations, his gaze lingering just a second too long. In front of others, he maintained his usual calm, but Sophia saw the tension in his jaw whenever she confidently disagreed with him. It wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. But there was satisfaction in watching him struggle to adjust to the reality that she no longer orbited around him. Outside of work, her connection with Lucas grew deeper. He admired her strength, but also saw through the composure to the woman who still carried quiet scars. Their dinners after long days were filled with laughter and easy warmth, something Ethan had never offered. Yet sometimes, late at night, when her phone buzzed with an email from Sterling Enterprises, Sophia found her mind drifting. Was it possible Ethan truly regretted what he'd done? Or was this just another game? One he wasn't used to losing? Either way, she decided, she wouldn't be pulled back into his gravity. Still, she couldn't deny one truth. Every time their eyes met across a boardroom table, something electric passed between them. Not love, not yet forgiveness, but something unresolved. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The following week began like any other. Early mornings, endless calls, and back-to-back meetings. But for Sophia, there was a shift in the air, subtle yet undeniable. Every time she and Ethan crossed paths, the energy between them grew harder to ignore. It wasn't hostility anymore. It was something sharper, the kind of tension that could turn into fire if either of them let it. Sophia told herself it was just business. That she'd moved on. That the ache that stirred in her chest whenever he looked at her was simply the ghost of a woman she no longer was. But the human heart, she was learning, doesn't always obey logic. The conference room was bathed in golden afternoon light when she arrived for another strategy session with Sterling Enterprises and Carter Ventures. Lucas waved her over with an easy smile, pulling out a chair beside him. "Perfect timing," he said. "We were just about to start." Ethan stood at the far end of the room, his attention seemingly fixed on the digital presentation projected on the screen. He didn't look at her, not right away, but Sophia could feel the moment his awareness shifted, like a quiet spark catching fire. She took her seat, pretending not to notice. As the discussion began, Sophia presented her recommendations with calm precision. Ethan challenged her once or twice, his tone clipped but professional, and she countered smoothly, earning a few impressed glances from the room. To the others, it was just another corporate exchange. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. One built on memories, regrets, and unspoken words. After the meeting, the crowd slowly dispersed, until only the three of them remained. Sophia, Ethan, and Lucas. "Great work as always," Lucas said, rising from his chair. "I've got a call to take, but let's grab dinner later, yeah?" Sophia nodded, grateful for his warmth. "Sure." When the door shut behind him, silence settled like a weighted blanket. Ethan moved first, walking toward the window, his hands in his pockets. "You and Carter seem close." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "We work well together." "Is that all?" She tilted her head, studying him. "Why does it matter?" He turned to face her, and for the first time his carefully controlled mask slipped. "Because I can't stand watching another man look at you the way I used to." Sophia's breath caught. The words hit harder than she wanted to admit. "Used to?" she echoed softly. Ethan's eyes darkened. "You think I stopped caring the day you left?" She forced a small bitter smile. "You had a strange way of showing it. Silence. Distance. The kind of love that felt like a prison." He flinched. "I thought I was protecting you. From my world, from my name." "You were protecting your image, Ethan," she cut in, her voice rising. "You didn't want a wife. You wanted a symbol. And I played the part until I couldn't breathe anymore." He stepped closer. "And yet here you are. Back in my world." "Not for you," she said sharply. "For myself." They stood inches apart now, the air between them charged. The scent of his cologne, clean, expensive, achingly familiar, stirred something deep in her chest. She hated that it still affected her. Ethan's gaze softened, his voice dropping. "You've changed, Sophia. Stronger. Smarter. And I can't decide if I hate it, or if it's the best thing that ever happened." Her pulse quickened. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" he murmured. "Because you might believe me?" Sophia took a step back, her voice trembling with anger, or maybe something else. "Because I might forget how much it hurt the first time." The silence that followed was thick and unyielding. Then, as if realizing he'd gone too far, Ethan straightened. "I'll see you at the next meeting," he said quietly, his tone returning to that polished corporate calm. He left before she could reply. Sophia sank into a chair, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. 4 years, she had dreamed of facing Ethan without fear. Of proving that she no longer needed him, that he couldn't touch her heart again. But as the door closed behind him, she felt a flicker of doubt. Because for the first time since their divorce, she wasn't sure if she hated him, or if the part of her that had once loved him had simply been waiting, patient and wounded, for this moment. That night, at dinner with Lucas, she smiled, laughed, and pretended everything was fine. But when she got home and stood by her window, city lights glimmering below, Ethan's voice echoed in her mind. "I can't stand watching another man look at you the way I used to." And despite herself, she felt it, the dangerous spark that could either rekindle her heart, or burn her all over again. Ethan Sterling didn't believe in distractions. At least he used to think that. 4 years, his life had been ruled by logic. Every decision calculated, every relationship a transaction, every word measured. Emotion, he'd always told himself, was a liability. And love? That was for people who didn't have empires to build. But now, sitting in his glass office late into the night, staring at the city skyline, he realized just how fragile that belief had been. Because ever since Sophia had walked back into his world, his control had started to fracture. One glance, one word, one smile at a time. He'd watched her in meetings, sharp and composed, commanding attention in a way that both irritated and fascinated him. Every time she disagreed with him, calmly, intelligently, it burned and thrilled him all at once. She'd become everything he'd once tried to make her suppress. And worse, she looked happy without him. His jaw tightened. He wasn't used to losing. Not in business. Not in life. And certainly not in love. Sophia, meanwhile, sat across town in her favorite cafe, her laptop open but untouched. The rain drizzled softly against the windows, and her cup of coffee had long gone cold. Lucas sat across from her, his expression thoughtful. "You've been a million miles away," he said gently. She sighed, setting her cup down. "Just tired, I guess. Too much going on." Lucas studied her for a moment, then smiled softly. "Or maybe someone's getting under your skin again." Sophia looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, his tone careful, "I've seen the way you look after those meetings. The way you try not to talk about him." Her heart stuttered. "Lucas." He held up a hand. "It's okay. I'm not upset. I just want you to be sure about what you want. If you're still healing, I'll wait. But if you're walking back into something that broke you," he trailed off, his eyes filled with quiet concern. Sophia's throat tightened. "You don't deserve to wait for someone who's still learning how to stop looking back," she said softly. Lucas gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe. But sometimes, the right person shows up when the past won't let go. I'm just asking you not to let him ruin what you've rebuilt." She nodded, unable to speak. When he left, she sat there for a long time, staring at the raindrops racing down the windowpane. Lucas was right. She had rebuilt her life, from ashes and tears and silence. But now, standing at the edge of something new, why did her heart keep turning toward the man who had once shattered it? The next morning, Sophia walked into the Sterling Enterprises building for another joint review session. Ethan was already there, surrounded by his team, but his gaze flickered instantly toward her when she entered. She wore confidence like armor, a sleek navy dress, simple gold jewelry, her hair in loose waves. The room quieted just slightly, as if sensing the unspoken tension between them. "Miss Blake," Ethan greeted smoothly, his tone formal but his eyes lingering. "Shall we begin?" The meeting was efficient, focused, professional, at least on the surface. But every time their hands brushed when exchanging documents, every time their gazes locked across the table, something inside Sophia coiled tighter. And Ethan noticed. After the meeting ended, as the others filed out, he approached her. "Walk with me," he said quietly. Sophia hesitated but followed. They stopped in the empty corridor, the city view spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He turned to her, his voice low. "I shouldn't have said what I did last time." "About Carter." Sophia crossed her arms. "Then why did you?" "Because I can't stand pretending I don't care," he admitted, the words rough, unpolished. "Every time I see you, I remember everything I ruined. Every chance I threw away." Her heart twisted painfully. "You had years to care, Ethan. Years to reach out. You didn't." He stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Because I didn't think I deserved to." Sophia froze. She'd never heard him sound so human. The silence stretched, heavy with everything they'd never said. Finally she spoke, her tone trembling but steady. "You can't rewrite the past just because you regret it now." "I'm not trying to rewrite it," he said. "I'm trying to change what comes next." Before she could respond, his hand brushed hers, a brief electric touch that sent a jolt straight to her chest. For a heartbeat, she wanted to close the distance between them, to let herself fall again. But then she remembered the loneliness, the coldness, the endless waiting for affection that never came. She pulled her hand back. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't make this harder." Ethan's expression flickered. Pain, regret, something deeper. "Sophia." But she was already turning away, her voice breaking as she said, "You're too late, Ethan. Some wounds don't heal just because you finally noticed them." She walked away before he could reply, leaving him standing alone in the empty corridor, the man who had everything, realizing too late the one thing he truly wanted was gone. That night, as Sophia sat alone in her apartment, she tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing, that she was free. But when her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas, "Dinner tomorrow," she hesitated before replying. Because in the quiet spaces between her thoughts, Ethan's voice still lingered. And she hated that part of her still listened. Sophia's days grew busier, but her mind refused to quiet. Her firm, Blake Strategies, had just landed a major investor. Articles praised her as one of the top rising female entrepreneurs in the city. She should have been celebrating. Every success was proof that she had survived, that she'd built something lasting from the ruins. But every time she stood in front of a camera, every time she saw her reflection in the mirror, she couldn't shake the echo of Ethan's voice in that corridor. "I'm not trying to rewrite it. I'm trying to change what comes next." She'd spent so long convincing herself that she was over him. And yet, those words had found a way to slip past every wall she'd built. The gala was held at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, one of the city's most exclusive venues. Sophia had been invited as a keynote speaker for the Women in Business event, a moment she'd worked years for. Her gown shimmered under the lights, an elegant deep emerald that hugged her frame and made her feel powerful, confident, untouchable. As she stepped onto the stage, applause filled the room. Cameras flashed, champagne glasses clinked, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. She spoke from the heart, about failure, reinvention, and the courage it took to walk away from what no longer served you. Her voice was strong, steady. When she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation. But when her eyes drifted across the room, her heart stuttered. Ethan Sterling was there. He stood near the back in a tailored black suit, his expression unreadable but his gaze locked on her. The applause faded into background noise. All she could feel was that familiar pulse, the one she hated herself for still recognizing. Later, as the crowd mingled, he approached. "You were incredible up there," he said quietly, his tone low enough that only she could hear. Sophia turned, glass of champagne in hand. "I didn't expect you here. I didn't expect to come," he admitted. "But I needed to see you. To see what you've become." Her heart twisted. "You could have done that from a distance. You've had plenty of practice watching from afar." Ethan exhaled slowly. "You're right. I've been a coward. I thought if I stayed away, I'd make it easier for you. But the truth is, I can't seem to stop missing you." Sophia laughed softly. Not cruelly, but sadly. "You don't miss me, Ethan. You miss the idea of what we could have been if you hadn't broken it." He stepped closer, his voice raw. "Then let me fix it." She shook her head. "You can't fix what you never understood. Try me." The words were simple, but they held a desperation she'd never heard from him before. For a moment, Sophia looked at him. Really looked. The man who had once seemed unshakable now carried regret in his eyes, lines of weariness etched into his face. He was no longer the untouchable billionaire who'd treated love as a weakness. He was just a man. "Do you even know what hurt the most?" she asked softly. "It wasn't the silence. It wasn't even the coldness. It was realizing I gave everything, and you gave nothing back. I was drowning, Ethan, and you didn't even notice." He swallowed hard. "I notice now." "That's not enough," she whispered. The air between them thickened. Around them, people laughed and clinked glasses, oblivious to the storm unfolding in plain sight. Ethan took a slow breath. "I know I don't deserve you. But I still love you, Sophia. I think I always did. I just didn't know how." Her chest tightened painfully. "And you think saying that now will change everything?" "No," he said. "But I needed you to hear it. From the man I should have been, not the one I was." Sophia's throat burned. Every part of her wanted to believe him. Wanted to let the years of anger and heartbreak dissolve. But forgiveness wasn't a key that opened old doors. It was the act of finally closing them. She set her glass down and met his eyes. "Thank you for saying it," she said softly. "But I don't need your love anymore to know my worth." He flinched, just barely, but nodded. "Then I'll let you go this time," he said quietly. "For real." Sophia smiled faintly. "That's the best thing you've ever done for me." When she left the gala, the cool night air brushed against her skin like freedom. The city stretched before her, endless and alive. Her phone buzzed, a message from Lucas. "Still up? Thought we could celebrate your big night. I've got champagne, and patience." Sophia smiled, tears stinging her eyes. She wasn't sure where life would take her next, but she knew this much. She was finally walking toward something new, not running from something old. She typed back a single word. "Yes." As she slipped into her car, she looked out the window one last time. Through the glass doors of the hotel, she saw Ethan watching her go, standing still amid the noise, his expression soft with acceptance. For once, she didn't feel anger or regret. Only peace. Because this time, leaving didn't feel like loss. It felt like closure. Morning sunlight spilled across Sophia's apartment, warm and gentle, painting soft gold on the walls. For the first time in a long time, she felt calm. Not the kind of calm that comes from silence or escape, but the kind that comes after the storm, when you've survived and know exactly who you are. Her phone buzzed with messages of congratulations. Clients, media, friends. Her speech from the gala had gone viral overnight, hailed as empowering and inspiring. But the attention didn't matter as much as the quiet satisfaction inside her chest. She'd done it. Not for revenge. Not for validation. But for herself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. When she opened the door, Lucas stood there, holding 2 coffees and that familiar easy smile. "Morning, superstar," he said. "I figured you'd need caffeine after conquering the city last night." Sophia laughed and stepped aside. "You're a lifesaver." He handed her a cup, his eyes kind but searching. "How are you feeling?" "Relieved," she admitted. "Lighter than I've felt in years." They sat on the couch, the city stretching behind them in endless blue. For a few quiet moments, neither spoke. Finally, Lucas said softly, "I saw him there last night." "Ethan." Sophia nodded. "I know. I didn't want to intrude," he continued carefully, "but I could see the way he looked at you. Like a man realizing too late what he lost." She smiled faintly. "Maybe he did. But I realized something too." "What's that?" "That I don't want to live in the past anymore. I spent years being defined by what broke me. By him, by our marriage, by who I was back then. I don't want to keep reopening that chapter just to prove I've outgrown it." Lucas nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now," she said, taking a sip of her coffee, "I just want to move forward. To build something real, with someone who sees me as I am, not who I used to be." Lucas's eyes softened. "That sounds like a woman who finally knows her worth." Sophia smiled. "Maybe I finally do." A week later, she got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter, neatly folded in an envelope with Ethan's signature at the bottom corner. She hesitated before opening it. "Sophia, I know I don't have the right to ask for your time, but I wanted to leave you with this. Not as a plea, but as an apology. I used to think love was about control. About keeping things perfect, untouched, unbroken. I didn't understand that real love means letting someone see the cracks. You saw mine, and I punished you for it. You deserved more than I gave, and I will carry that truth for the rest of my life. I won't ask for another chance. I only hope that someday when you think of me, it's not with anger but with peace. Thank you for teaching me what strength really looks like. Ethan." Sophia read it twice, her eyes stinging. Then she folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. She didn't cry. She didn't ache. Instead, she smiled, a soft, genuine smile, because this time, goodbye didn't hurt. It simply was. Months passed. Blake's strategies continued to grow, expanding into international markets. Lucas remained by her side, steady, supportive, patient. Their friendship deepened into something more, something built not on longing or regret, but on quiet understanding. One evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the skyline, glasses of wine in hand. "Remember when you told me not to let him ruin what I'd rebuilt?" Sophia said softly. Lucas nodded. "I remember. You were right," she said. "But I think I needed to face him one last time to realize I'd already moved on." Lucas smiled. "Closure has a way of sneaking up on us when we're not looking." She turned toward him, her voice gentle. "You know, for the first time in years, I'm not chasing anything. Not love, not success, not approval. I'm just living." "And?" he asked. "It feels good." Lucas laughed quietly and lifted his glass. "To new beginnings, then." Sophia clinked hers against his. "To new beginnings." Later that night when she was alone, Sophia stood by her window and looked out at the city lights. The same city where she had once lost everything, and the same one where she had rebuilt herself from the ground up. She thought about Ethan, about what they had, what they lost, and the lessons carved into her heart because of it. He had been the fire that broke her, and the reason she learned to rise from the ashes. Some loves aren't meant to last forever. Some are meant to change you, to push you toward the version of yourself you were always meant to become. Sophia smiled softly, whispering into the quiet. Thank you for teaching me how to begin again. And with that, she turned away from the window, the light catching her face. Serene, certain, free. 6 months later. The magazine headline read, Sophia Blake and Lucas Carter announce merger and engagement. Sophia laughed as she read it aloud in the office, surrounded by cheers from her team. Lucas slipped an arm around her waist, murmuring, Guess the secret's out. Let them talk, she said with a grin. We've earned it. Outside, cameras flashed, journalists waited, but Sophia didn't care. Because this time, when she stepped forward, it wasn't into anyone's shadow. It was into her own light. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.